Lenda de baleeiro da Ilha do Pico.
The legend of the whaler from Pico Island.
A lenda de baleeiro da Ilha do Pico é uma tradição da Ilha do Pico, no arquipélago dos Açores.
This legend is from Pico Island. Pico is one of the islands located in the Azorian archipelago.
Que fala da coragem, do que é ser-se baleeiro e dos perigos que se corria para ganhar o pão nosso de cada dia.
This legend is a tale of the courage that it took to be a whaler, and the dangers that whalers faced in order to make a living and win our daily bread, or in other words, to put food on the table.
A lenda passa-se há muito tempo, numa manhã ensolarada na localidade de São João do Pico, logo depois do raiar da aurora. O sol levantava-se para os lados das lajes do Pico e a cor verde dos vinhedos e dos milharais destacava-se por entre o negro das pedras queimadas dos vulcões.
This legend begins a long time ago on a sunny morning in the village of St. John. The sun was rising from the east. The sun rose over the village of lodges in the east. The vibrant green color of the vineyards and the cornfields shone vividly bright against the black lava earth and black rocks once burnt by the Pico volcano.
Nas suas cozinhas, as mulheres preparavam o almoço, que naqueles tempos era quase sempre composto por sopas de bolo, papas de milho ou batata com peixe.
In the homes, the women were awake and working. Their daily tasks were to prepare lunch, which in those days was almost always made up of a corn flour flatbread soup, corn oatmeal, or potatoes with fish.
Os homens dirigiam-se para as suas terras, para a jornada do dia, para sachar o milho, bater termoço, apanhar batatas ou cuidar das suas uvas.
The men in the village of St. John left home early in the morning sun to begin their daily tasks, to harvest the corn, to beat the tremoco, to harvest the potatoes, and to tend to the grapevines.
Subitamente soou o alarme de baleia à vista. Alguns numa das vigias de baleia, estrategicamente colocadas ao longo da costa, foram disparados foguetes.
Suddenly, the men in the fields and the women in the kitchens heard the sound of an alarm. Everyone knew what this sound meant. Whale at sight. Somewhere high in the hills from one of the lookout towers strategically located along the coast, a whale watcher lit a flare firework. The Fouguette firework exploded with a pop, loud enough to be heard in the entire village.
Os homens largaram o que faziam. Os sachos caíram para o chão, os alveões ficaram enfiados na terra nos locais onde estavam. As bolhas de milho foram abandonadas com as canas por amarrar. Os animais foram presos a um galho de árvore próximo e os homens correram para os cais.
The men dropped what they were doing and stopped working. The farmhouse fell to the ground. The pickaxes stuck into the ground, all left behind by the working men. The corn stalks were also left without even getting tied. At the sound of the alarm, the men tied up their animals and ran toward the wharf on the water.
As mulheres em casa preparavam uma merenda apressada e também elas correram para o cais a levar a comida aos maridos numa saca de retalhos de pano antes que eles partirem para o mar.
The women packed food for their husbands in a clean rag cloth and tied the corners together to make a lunch pouch. The women quickly prepared the meals and also ran to the docks. The women handed the food to the men and their families to take onto the whaling boats before the men launched out to sea in hunt of the whale.
Os primeiros a chegar arriaram os botes baleeiros pondo-os na água e partiram assim que tinham a tripulação completa. No cais, as mulheres ficaram a chorar, sem saber se na luta entre o homem e o grande animal alguém morreria, como frequentemente acontecia.
The first men to arrive at the docks untied the whaleboats and lowered them into the water. As soon as the whaleboat crew was complete, the men departed and set off after the whale. While the men set sail out to sea in their whaleboats, the women on the wharf watched and cried. They cried because they did not know whether or not the fight with the big sea animal would bring death to their families, as it frequently happened.
Depois de algumas milhas de navegação à vela, com o vento a favor, avistaram a baleia ali próxima. Era uma grande baleeira adulta. Um espermacete com mais de 100 barris de óleo, segundo os cálculos, o que seria uma fortuna.
Back on the whale boats, the Pico men sailed many miles of navigation by sails, away from the coastline of the island with the wind at their side. Soon the whale was spotted. It was a big adult whale, a sperm whale worth more than 100 barrels of oil. According to the whalers' calculations, the whale was worth quite a fortune.
Logo se gerou grande rebuliço nos botes. Uma baleia daquele porte não se via todos os dias. Representava não só comida ganha para muitos dias, mas também prazer para os homens que estavam habituados ao mar e à batalha desta pesca.
Upon seeing the whale, a big stir occurred on the boats among the men. A whale of that size was not seen every day. A whale that big represented food to be gained for many days for everyone in the village. This whale caused a stir amongst the men as they thought about the pleasure of the hunt, for these were men accustomed to the sea and to the battle of the whale hunt.
As velas foram arriadas e os homens começaram a remar para se aproximarem da baleia que resfolgava. Soltava esguichos de respingos no ar, mergulhava para voltar a aparecer metros mais à frente. Num bote que primeiro se conseguia pôr em posição, o arpoador curvara-se para a frente, fixar o olhar na baleia e acertar o arpão.
The sails were rolled up and tied. The whalers began to row, getting closer to the whale. Just then the whale breached and sprayed water out from its blowhole. The whale breached to take in a large breath of air just before it dove under the waves, only to breach again some meters away from the whaleboats. In one of the whaleboats, the men who were the first to maneuver their boat in a good position to get a fair shot at the whale. In this first boat, the harpooner bent forward and fixed his eyes upon the whale. The whale within his sight, he threw the harpoon and hit the whale.
Ferida, a baleia acelerou o seu nadar, afastando-se do bote e levando no dorso o arpão amarrado a uma corda forte que se ia desenrolando de uma selha no fundo do bote.
Now wounded, the sperm whale accelerated its swimming, distancing itself from the boat. The whale took into its back the harpoon. The harpoon was tied to a strong rope that unrolled out of a pail in the whaleboat.
A corda não teve comprimento suficiente e foi amarrada a uma segunda corda, numa segunda selha até que não havia mais cordas.
As the whale swam away and pulled on the harpoon rope, the men noticed that the rope did not have sufficient length. The whalers tied the end to another rope, and then to another, and then another, and another, until there were no more ropes.
O trancador pegou na parte da corda que ainda estava na selha e antes que ela acabasse, amarrou-a à sua cintura.
Seeing that they had no more rope, the harpooner grabbed the end of the last rope that still sat in the pail. Before the rope ended, he quickly tied it around his waist.
Assim, foi arrancado do bote e levado pelo mar, puxado pela baleia que nadava para o desconhecido sem que alguém tivesse tempo de intervenir.
The sperm whale pulled the rope, and the harpooner was yanked from the boat and taken into the water and across the sea. Pulled by the whale, the harpooner swam into the unknown without anyone having any time to intervene.
Podendo contar apenas com as velas e remos para navegar, os botes não tinham velocidade para perseguir o animal, mas deram início a uma busca provavelmente fútil.
The whale swam much faster than the boat could sail or the men could row. The more they rowed, the more the men began to realize that there was no way that the boats would catch the sea animal.
Ao chegar da noite, tiveram que remar para a terra, abandonando o trancador.
As night fell, the whalers had to give up their search for the harpooner and the whale. They returned to Pico Island. The whalers sadly rowed back to land, abandoning their harpooner.
A família deste vestiu-se de luto e as mulheres choraram. e carpiram de dor durante toda a noite.
When the harpooner's family learned that he was lost at sea, they began to mourn. The women dressed in black. The women cried and mourned their pain all through the night.
Quando a manhã do dia seguinte nasceu, saíram novamente, botes para o mar, numa procura por muitos considerados vã, mas que era necessário, mas que não fosse senão por descargo de consciência.
The next morning, the boat sailed out again, but this time they were on a search that many considered hopeless, however necessary. More than anything, the people wanted to relieve their consciences and put their minds at ease.
Era uma tentativa de encontrar o corpo do trancador para lhe ser dado um enterro digno.
They knew they had to search for the harpooner's body to give him a worthy burial.
Depois de muitas milhas de afastamento da costa, avistaram na linha do horizonte, que no mar é sempre baixo, uma mancha negra. Estranhando o fenómeno, rumaram para lá.
Again, the whalers took to their whale ships. After having sailed many miles away from the island, the whalers were in the open ocean. Far away from the coast, they spotted a black dot on the horizon. Strangely wondering what this black spot could be, they rowed out to it.
Ao chegar, encontraram uma grande baleia já morta, a flutuar e em cima dela, de pé, o trancador encostado ao cabo do arpão.
Upon arrival, they found a big, floating, dead whale. On top of the sperm whale stood the harpooner leaning against the large wooden handle of the harpoon.
Perfeitamente bem, disse. Agora que vocês chegam, tenho estado aqui toda a noite à espera.
Upon seeing the men in their boats, the harpooner spoke. Perfectly well, he said to his mates. Now you guys arrive? I've been waiting here all night.
Fumavam grosso cigarro, embrulhado em casca de milho, como se estivesse sentado a uma mesa.
He was smoking a thick cigar wrapped in a corn husk, as content as if he was sitting at a table.
Reza a lenda que ele nunca disse o que se passou, nem onde foi buscar o cigarro de folha de milho, nem o lume.
The prayer and the legend that follows is that the harpooner never told what happened or where he got his cigar, not even how he got the fire to light it up.